Welcome back to the Raising Rock podcast. I am Elise and I am your host. Today on the podcast, we have Kari Trent Stageberg. If you remember, we had John Trent on and he covered the blessing. Kari is John's daughter and they are in ministry together. Their ministry is Strong Families and they are a dynamic duo talking about the blessing, but then also sharing Kari's testimony of what it was like walking away from the blessing and going from the blessing to broken, back to the blessing. And she shares her testimony with us today. But what I love is she shares with us really specific, granular, practical ways that we can incorporate the blessing into our day-to-day life. So last week's episode was an incredible foundation of what the blessing is, how to give it, how to receive it. But this week is all about how do we get really practical and day-to-day apply this to our lives, apply it to motherhood, apply it to our marriage. It was so powerful and so effective for me. And it sparked conversation on my date night with my husband. It sparked different activities for me to start doing with my kids. Like I have applied this and I am so excited to see where this application takes our family and what it does to transform the dynamic in our home. She also covers the animal personality test, which is so different for our show. We've not really ever covered anything like personality types or personality tests, but they have this animal personality test where it really just helps you understand, one, who did God design you to be and who did God design the people in your life to be and how do you all interact with each other. And it is such a cool tool. They are launching new features on their website, strongfamilies.com, as we speak. So you're going to hear some of the things that they are launching and it's available. So by the time this episode airs, it'll be available for you all to see and play around with and take the test. And it's a really awesome tool. I think you guys are going to love it. Before we get into the episode with Kari, please pause, like, subscribe, follow, comment. You know what I'm asking you to do. It really does help us. You guys, we are trying to book awesome guests on the show and they want to say yes and come on the show when they see how many people are listening to our episodes, how many people are commenting, how many people follow. All of it really, really does make a difference. So I beg you, please leave a comment, like, subscribe, follow, whatever it is that you can do based on the platform that you are watching this on. It really, really, really helps. So thank you to all those who have done it. And thank you to all those who are going to do it today. I really appreciate you. Without further ado, Kari, welcome to the show. Kari, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Elise. I'm honored to be here.
Well, we loved chatting with your dad, or I loved chatting with your dad. By now, the audience heard his episode about the blessing. If you haven't listened to that episode, I would just stop what you're doing, go back and listen to it, and then come back because it's a really great foundation for where Kari and I are going. But Kari, we had an awesome conversation.
And he's my favorite speaker, so you will not be disappointed.
He's so fun. Like he just has the funniest little sense of humor and way of telling stories. He's just so cute. You're so lucky to have him as your dad.
Amazing.
So go listen to that if you haven't already. But Kari, you grew up with what your dad calls the blessing. He blessed you and your siblings every night before bed. And we learned about that all last week, how we can pray little prayers over our children and what the blessing means and how we can give it to our kids. But I know from hearing your testimony that there was a season of your life where one would look at it and be like, okay, I don't think you had the blessing. I think the blessing lifted off of you. We know that's not true. We know the blessing is always there, right? Like it never leaves us. But there was a season where you were in a dark place. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And what does it look like to go from blessed to broken, back to blessed, and everything in between?
Yeah. Well, and like you said, my dad's the real deal. I grew up in a home with a dad in marriage and family ministry, and I watched a lot of people who weren't necessarily the real deal, and I watched my family, and I am so blessed and honored to say that, like, my mom, my dad, There literally wasn't a day where I didn't know that God was crazy about me and that my parents were crazy about me. And that is not to say that our home was perfect. It was not. But in terms of healthy attachment, which is really what the blessing helps us do, I could honestly answer the 3 critical attachment questions. And I kind of want to frame the rest of my answer based off of this, because for some of us, like we might be going, well, why does this even matter? Why is this really significant? But Dr. Sue Johnson, who's phenomenal, she's really the founder of Emotionally Focused Therapy. But what she discovered was if we could say yes to 3 critical attachment questions, that means that there's probably healthy connection in that relationship. And this is true whether it's parent-child, whether it's spouse, whether it's a friendship. So kind of keep this in mind. So the first one is, are you really there for me? When I reach out, will you reach back? Number 2 is, do you value me? Am I enough? And number 3 is, can I depend on you? Will you be there when things get rough? And so I can honestly say that I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that I had parents who I could say yes to that about. Again, not that because our family was perfect, but because they made the choice to build healthy things into us and to break unhealthy patterns that they grew up with. But here's what I want you to hear out of that. It's a choice, and your children have a choice. And I was the kid who, while I understood it from my parents, I really didn't understand it from the Lord. I didn't understand. It felt like rules without relationship. God felt incredibly abstract. I could not say yes to those 3 things with God because it just felt incredibly out of reach, if that makes sense. And so I ended up walking away from faith and family. And to make a long story short, I eloped, which is probably like not the best thing to do when you have a dad in marriage and family ministry. And I found myself smack dab in the middle of an abusive relationship. And if you want to talk about the opposite of blessing, it's abuse. And so for 5 years, my family didn't know where I was. They didn't know what was going. I mean, they knew something was critically, horribly, horrifically wrong. They knew that before I even married him. But it just went from bad to worse. And I felt like everything that I had grown up hearing had been completely stripped away in my life. And so I just want to encourage, moms that are listening right now to know that here's those 3 things, that blessing, the thing that we talked so much about on the last episode and that we're going to talk about today, it's really what brought me home. So we as parents can't control what our kids choose, but we can choose how we get to show up for them, even in hard moments. And I really believe that there's hope for our kids. Even if you have a kid right now that's really struggling, there's hope, and God's not done with that story.
Such a beautiful reminder. And it's so true. Like, we can't control what our kids do. And I think we spend so much of our motherhood journey helicoptering over our child, controlling their story, controlling the outcome of their story, when really we have no control. Like, we need to live a motherhood that's surrendered, but it's so difficult to practically surrender our children and realize they are not ours. Like, we do not own our children. They belong to God's. They are ours to steward, but they aren't actually ours. And so I think having that perspective is so important. Of we can bless our children, we can pray over our children, but we can't control ultimately what they decide to do. We can lead a horse to water, but we can't force it to drink. So what ultimately you walked away from the Lord, you were in this abusive relationship. I don't think we need to get into the weeds of what was going on in the marriage unless you want to highlight a couple little things, but I really would love to focus on how did your dad, because I know your dad played a big part in you realizing your worth and your value, and you ultimately did leave the marriage. So walk me through that season of life and the role your dad played in that.
Yeah, well, and I've shared a lot about my story. If you Google my name, you can hear a lot. So I won't go a ton into those details, but I mean, just to set the stage, like, it was abusive in any way you can imagine, like physically, emotionally, sexually, spiritually, verbally, like pick one. And that was where it was. And so it was a really, really dark season. And so in the middle of that, it really was my parents' blessing and my dad's blessing that brought me home. And I'll just share 2 quick examples of how that kind of happened, because one set the stage for me to make that choice to get out and get help, and the other really gave me permission to move forward. And so the first one was I mean, this was probably about 6 months before I ended up actually leaving. I don't know if my dad got an email. We'd have to ask him. I always forget to ask him, even though we share this story frequently. Something came up on a notification that I needed new tires. And this is just going to show you like how bad things were in our relationship at that moment. He texted me and was like, if you show up, I will buy you new tires. And I actually did the cost benefit analysis, like, okay, new tires, that costs X. And then the drama that I'm going to have to deal with and the repercussions that I'm going to have to handle for actually seeing a member of my family, because that's real when abuse is present. And so I decided that money won and went and met my dad to get new tires. And when I showed up, he handed me a piece of paper. And on that piece of paper was a list of 10 truths about who I was. And they were all character traits. I was not in a place where I was willing to hear about God or talk about God at that point. Could you have attached a scripture to each one? Totally. He didn't, which was what I needed at that time. And so he just chose to write out 10 character traits that he saw in me. I almost didn't take the paper, but I'm so glad that I did, because what happened was I went home and an incident would happen, whether it was verbal or physical, and I'd find myself going in the bathroom and pulling out that sheet of paper. And those were not the words I was hearing from my ex-husband. They were the opposite, actually, and then some. But I found myself pulling out this sheet of paper and reading it. And at first it was like, yeah, none of that's true. That can't be real. And then a couple months go by and it was like, gosh, like, that would be, I wish that was true. And then a few more months went by and it was like, I really, really want that to be true of me. And eventually I ended up, God rescued me out of that situation and I got out and I was able to hand my dad back that paper 2 years later and say, I believe every single thing on this list and then some. And he really chose in that moment to give me his blessing. He chose to point out a special future, that fourth element of the blessing, when I couldn't see it for myself. And not because I was living the way that I should have been or doing the things that I quote unquote should have been, but because I was his daughter and he loved me and he wanted to show that genuine commitment that, hey, even when things are hard, I'm going to be there. And in a healthy way. So, that doesn't mean you throw boundaries out the window or whatever, but that was a way for him to step in that moment. And just to kind of close off the end of that story, it was really my parents' blessing that brought me home. And when I did get out, I went up to Washington State, which is where I currently live, and I did a 1 month, basically, I called it rehab, but it was just an intensive program to help me kind of just put the pieces of my life back together. And that was when I really found the Lord. I realized Jesus was real. He actually cared about me. It wasn't just a one-way relationship. There actually was. I could say yes to those 3 attachment questions with the Lord. And I really began this journey of healing. Well, what I didn't know was the day I was flying home from that 1 month program, my ex-husband showed up at my parents' house and threatened them. It was a not great situation that I'm not going to get into details about, but he ended up miraculously leaving without anything, getting too crazy. And I show up 30 minutes later from the airport. And I have no idea what I'm walking into. And I'm sitting there thinking, when I find out what had happened, I'm like, wow, it's really good that my suitcase is packed, because clearly my parents are going to be like, we are done. And so I'm sitting there listening to this. I'm crying. And it also was the first time that I realized that my choices impacted other people. So it hit really hard in a lot of different ways. But I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, like where am I going to go? What am I going to do? And I will never forget this moment as long as I live. My dad just put his hand on my shoulder and he said, Kari, it's not about where you've been. It's about where you're going. And he gave me his blessing. And my mom did the same. And they let me know that they weren't done with me, that they still believed I had a special future, that they were willing to help me with that, as long as, again, there were still boundaries in place. But they gave me permission to say, even in the worst moment that any of us could possibly imagine, we choose you. And again, I want to be clear, like, trust was not rebuilt overnight. There was a lot of work that had to be done. There were things that had to happen. But I knew in that moment, there literally was nothing that I could do that would stop my parents from loving me. And, to their credit as well, and I don't know how much my dad talked about this. I mean, they were going to counseling. They were doing the work. Like, they were processing their feelings. So it wasn't like they were coming into this still bound. Like, I mean, it doesn't mean that they weren't grieving or hurting, but like they had done a lot of work to get to a point where they could do that. So, again, I'm so thankful for that, because I would not be where I am, married to the world's most incredible man, having two precious, beautiful, awesome little boys, getting to do ministry with. None of that would have happened without the choices that my parents made and others made. It wasn't just my parents that stepped in to bless me in that season. God placed people in my life along the way that chose to say things and do things that really helped me get there. And again, I just want to encourage like the mom whose kid is really struggling. God's doing that. Even if you're not the one that can speak truth right now, there are other people that God is using to speak truth to your children. And if there is a way for you to do it in a healthy way, like that list of 10 things or whatever that is, great. But if they really are not communicating with you, do not give up hope that they are being pursued, because God does not stop. He loves us that much. So yeah, that's kind of like our story as a family with regards to the blessing. And yeah, I does that answer your question? I know that was like a really long answer to your question.
No, it totally answers my question. How old were you when all of this happened?
Let's see. I met him. I think I was 20 when I met him, and I was 25 when I got out.
It just goes to show we never stop being parents. We never stop worrying about our kids. It's like a myth that they turn 18 and it's suddenly like, okay, that's it. I was talking to a friend the other day. She's like, my daughter turned 18 and nothing's changed. Like I don't know why they make it this big milestone of like, you're 18 now, because I don't know. I almost feel like as an adult, you need your parent, not more, because as a child, you're dependent on them for life. You're dependent on them for a roof and food. But as an adult, I'm so dependent on my mom, but in a very different way. Like I've never stopped needing her. And I think it's stories like this that really make us realize like our children will never stop needing us. They'll never stop needing us to speak blessing over them and life over them and truth over them. Like it doesn't ever stop.
It doesn't. And we still can do it. And even if it looks different, we can still do it. Like my dad, when I was growing up, always, every time I'd come home, he'd be sitting at the kitchen table with apples and peanut butter. Like whether it was 5 p.m. or it was, midnight or whatever curfew was, or if I was coming home, I was a cheerleader, so coming home from a game, he'd be sitting at the table with apples and peanut butter and want to just talk about my night. And it cost him a lot of sleep, but he still does that. I just turned 40, and when I go home to my parents' house, even though I'm married and even if Joey and I are out, like he'll stay up until we get home and have apples and peanut butter.
Oh.
And, it's like we still get to choose to do that for our kids. But the conversations from when I was 16 and didn't get asked to prom to now, like I said, early 40s and I'm a mom, they're different conversations. But man, do I still need my dad. And do I still appreciate the fact and give him a hard time? Like, he'll start texting at like 9 p.m. I want to go to bed. Where are you? Like, but it's, we all need apples and peanut butter, regardless of how old we are.
That's my new favorite line. We all need apples and peanut butter. I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to start doing that with my kiddos. Think of like their favorite thing and just have that available and talk with them. Because it's so, you get so sucked into life and the busyness in life and the chaos of life that we rarely slow down enough to just be with our kids and open up time for hard conversation. That's one of the things that we've really focused on with Raising Rock is this idea of in-between moments. Like life happens in the in-between. Life doesn't happen in these big conversations, these big, let's sit down and talk about sex or let's sit down and talk about porn. Well, yes, those are important conversations as parents. Life happens like in the car on the way to baseball practice or at the dinner table after a sports practice with apples and peanut butter. Like that is when life happens. And so as a mom, you now have 2 boys, you're remarried. Mm-hmm. What does practically it look like to live a life in motherhood and in marriage where we are giving blessing to those in our life?
I am not a perfect mom. I am not a perfect wife. Just ask my husband. He adores me and I try, but I just want to be really clear that like every family has mess. Every family has challenges. And it's how we deal with that that's going to help our kids learn to deal with things and hopefully continue generations, of blessing on them. So please just hear me say, like, this is not coming out of perfection and I fail at things far more than I would like to. But if it's okay, I think what I'd love to do is I'm super practical. Like to me, if I walk away from something and I don't know how to do it, I'm like, well, that wasted the 30 minutes or hour that I had as a mom. And so I'd love to get really, really practical with how moms or dads or parents, whoever, how we can live out blessing for our kids. But I'd love to do it in regards to like the elements of the blessing so that we can kind of tie back to that episode. So hopefully it makes sense in a way where it's not just a bunch of random ideas, but it's really helping you realize that, hey, I can take each of those 5 elements and make them those little moments that you were talking about, those in-between moments that don't take a lot of energy, they don't take a lot of money, but they really do show our kids that, hey, I'm going to show up for you and I'm crazy about you, so that they don't have to wonder. Because if we don't fill in those gaps, they're going to fill it in. And I have yet to run into someone who has filled in a gap positively. Unless they're narcissistic and then they don't have any gaps anyways. So that's a totally different paradigm. Anyways, so let's start with that first one, that appropriate, meaningful touch. And I just want to give like a couple of ways, and then maybe, Elise, maybe you and I can just kind of have a conversation about these things. And I'd love to hear, like, what are you doing? Like, are there ideas that come up for you as you kind of hear these that you're already doing with your kids and that kind of a thing?
Let's do it.
So one super easy way to add appropriate, meaningful touch to your home is to give a high five. And there is a phenomenal study that I can share a link with to you that you guys can read, but it was about NBA professional basketball teams. And I think it was a bunch of researchers that were like, hey, honey, I really want to watch a lot of basketball, so I have to do it for science, quote unquote. Because what they did was they watched professional basketball teams from the preseason all the way through the postseason, which is a lot of basketball. But what they studied was the effect of appropriate, meaningful touch on the teams and how far and how well they did in their season. And what they uncovered was teams that had appropriate, meaningful touch, so specifically like high fives, a tap, whatever it was, those teams not only played better, but they went further as a team. And it wasn't just when positive things happened. It was also when somebody fouled out, when they totally messed up a shot, when they didn't do what needed to be done. And so one easy way to do this is like high five over everything. And my poor husband gets roped into all of my social experiments that I'm like writing or teaching about. And so I made him do this with me, and we high fived over everything. Like, there's a poopy diaper, high five. Totally forgot to unload the dishwasher today, high five. Like, all right, we navigated that like a parenting pro, like the good and the bad. And so we were probably high fiving like 40 times a day. And it is amazing how much it, one, makes you feel like you're on a team with somebody else. You're not alone. And two, it's a really fun, silly, sneaky way to add appropriate touch into your life. And the average woman needs 15 appropriate touches a day to feel loved. And that's really kind of hard to do for some of us. But if you make it a high five, even your high school kids, they're going to give you a hard time about it, but they can high five you, or they'll fist bump you, or make up a silly family handshake. But it's a really easy way to just begin to add touch. So that's kind of like my one. I'd love to kind of like chat with you. Like, I mean, what are some, because we think about like, oh, hugging, and sometimes our teenagers are like, why would you do that to me? Or even my 5-year-old, it's like too much. So, how, like, let's talk about that. Like, are there things that you're doing that your kids love? Like anything come up for you as I share even just a high five?
Well, this isn't going to answer your question, but I do know what we are implementing immediately. My husband coaches the kindergarten and 3rd grade basketball team, and we're going to be implementing high fives all throughout both teams. Everyone gets high fives. You miss a shot, high five. You foul out, high five. Like, everyone's getting high fives. And maybe I'll make all the parents, okay, guys, we're going to high five each other so the kids see us doing it. But we will be implementing that in basketball for sure. In terms of my kids, I would say we're all very touchy and very physical. I call my kids like little zip ties. They're very independent in the sense of they'll go out in the neighborhood and play, and they don't need me with them. But when we're together, they want to eat close to either me or my husband, sit close to me or my husband. There's no like space bubbles in our family, much to my chagrin. Well,
that's awesome and unusual, because a lot of people, there's like always the one that has the space bubble.
Well, yeah, there are times where we're like, oh, can you like eat your dinner over there? Because literally he's like on top of me while he's eating dinner. But touch is not an issue for us. I'm sure as we get into the older years, it will become like, I'm starting to notice when I take my son we homeschool, so he goes to co-op a couple times a week. He's not wanting to hold my hand like walking in, and he's 9. So I'm like, okay, we're phasing out of the wanting to be seen with me in public and be physical with me in public. So maybe that's where I can implement the high fives instead of like, hey, give me a kiss, be like, high five, have a great day. But yeah, I would say both of my kids love massages. So at night I'll lay in bed and I'll just kind of like rub their heads or rub their shoulders or rub their feet. But yeah, they're both very physical, love being close, love being touched. But I don't know, they're 6 and 9, so they might grow out of that at some point.
Yeah, they're still kind of in that stage. And you know, and also I think some of it too is like for those of us that grew up where touch was maybe really broken, it can feel really hard to give. And so maybe we aren't naturally built that way. Or if our kids have gone through something and touch is really broken, it can feel, you know, like an insurmountable object. And again, that's where something like a high five is so low stakes. A lot of people feel comfortable doing that. And so it's a really great way to not only add like fun for your family, but even if touch is like maybe not your natural love language or bent, it's a great way to just start. And who knows, you know, a touch can move to a hand on the shoulder. Which can move to a side hug, which can move to, you know what I mean? Like it kind of is an on-ramp to saying this is how we can display what healthy touch looks like in our home.
I love it.
Well, and I did drop that link. I'll share that link with you, but I will say this because I do think it's really powerful. I'll just read this part really quick. So what they found with those teams were the ones that actually displayed healthy touch in a great way, including high fives. They played like they trusted each other. They consistently found the best shots on offense, helped each other on defense, talked more, and of course, won more games. Now, here's what I want you to hear, because this is the conversely, and I think this is the choice that we have to make. Every time we give a blessing, there's a choice. Whether it's my dad writing that letter, whether it's apples and peanut butter and staying up late and maybe losing some sleep, there are things that's a choice. A high five is a choice. And sometimes it's an awkward choice or, you know, I don't feel like doing that right now. But hear what the conversely sounds like. Conversely, the worst teams in the NBA barely touched and had terrible body language. And as a result, they consistently made selfish, inefficient plays, and their record showed it. And I think that's the thing. It's the difference between saying, look, things may not be happy right now. Like I said, these are happy and sad high fives, but you don't have to do this alone. We're still a team, and we've got you and the teams around you. And so I think, you know, for us and for our family, it's like, all right, I want the first one. I want to have, you know, trust. I want to have better communication. I want to have unity. I want us to win more as a family. And if doing a high five can help the NBA, I'm pretty sure it can help us relationally as well. But yeah, we can move on to number 2, because again, there's some really cool practical ways to do spoken or written word, which is that second element of the blessing. So a couple of ideas, and I'm going to try to keep this so that, because I know there's parents here from all different age ranges and maybe even grandparents. And so these, I want to try to give a couple of options, and then maybe we can just chat about it again, because I love what you had to share with your family too. One of them is to say 3 positive things whenever someone says something negative. And this can go 2 ways. So my husband actually makes me do this. I hate it. I kick and throw like as much of a grown-up tantrum as I'm allowed to throw. I hate it. But if I say something negative about myself, he makes me look in the mirror and say 3 things that I love about myself. It is hard. It feels like I'm swallowing bile at times, but it is really good. And so we do this with my kids. If they say something mean about their brother, okay, no, stop right now. You're going to say not just sorry, but what are 3 things that you really love about him? And then if they say something, they're 2 and 5, so they don't really say negative things about themselves. But we will continue that if that happens. And so that's a really great way to say, okay, how do we use words to not just, hey, it's okay if somebody did something mean or upsetting to you, but we don't need to be insulting while we do that. And we also don't need to insult ourselves, because our kids watch how we talk about ourselves and emulate that too. Another one is to hide sticky notes around the house. So like put them in a shoe, put them on the doorknob when they wake up. Little things just about like, I love your smile. Like you bring so much joy, whatever the things are. And actually my dad took this to another level, which my oldest is going into kindergarten next year. So I'm excited to get to do this. But at parent teacher night, like back to school night, he would hide little sticky notes around the classroom for us. So like in our cubby, like somewhere in our books, in our pencil box, like on our chair when we came in. And so we'd show up at school, and throughout the year, because sometimes he'd like hide it in a weird place, we'd end up finding a little blessing sticky note that had something that my dad loved about us or a character trait that he saw in us. And so those are really easy ways to do that. Another, if you've got a kid in college, like I have a bunch of friends whose kids are headed to college this year. Another idea, again, is something that my mom and dad did, was they went and they bought like at the dollar store, like a card for each week of the school year. And they would write a little note in the card each week and send it via mail. And I know snail mail is like dead today, but it was so cool. Like every week I got a card in the mail. Occasionally they'd slip like a $10 bill or something in there to like get extra groceries or like a treat. But mostly it was just a little like 1 or 2 lines of like, hey, we love you. You're doing great. Hey, you know, we see this in you. Like you've got it. Or, you know, midterms or whatever. And so again, it doesn't have to be crazy, but these little things really matter. And imagine your kid having a bad day at school, at college, and you're not there, and they go to the mailbox and, hey, you know, there's a letter for me. So again, does it take time? Absolutely. But the payoff is worth it. And then I'll just share one more and then we can chat. Another great one, if you have little kids, and I know like we're in this season, we're getting everyone to talk around the dinner table is really hard because we've got little ones that always want to talk, which is fabulous. And so what we've started doing is something we did when I was growing up. It's called Pass the Salt Shaker. Or if your kids are not trustworthy with the salt shaker, pick another inanimate object, because I know I can totally see that going haywire.
I love that. I would also not ever pass salt because we'd all end up with like mounds of salt in our food. But I love the idea. Let's just not use salt.
Yes. So you can pick another object. It does not have to be the salt shaker if your kids are not trustworthy at that stage of life. But have everyone go around and say something that they love about the person who is holding the salt shaker or designated inanimate object. And it's a great way to get your kids involved. It's really cute. We do this all the time with our boys, and it's really fun to see what they come up with. And the things that stick out to them, because, you know, it's like, oh, well, you played this game with me today. It's like, okay, mental note, playing that again, like make sure I take the time to do that again. And so it's just a really great way to help them practice using words and in a safe and fun, different way. So how about you, Elise?
These are so practical for me. We really struggle in our home with sibling dynamic. So between the two boys, they are very competitive with one another. They are always concerned with who's going to get up the stairs the quickest, who's going to get into the car the quickest. And I'm like, I don't understand the need. Like, why are we so competitive about who's going to get to the top of the stairs quicker? But yet that is what like controls our home, is their dynamic and kind of the oil and water that they can become. And so the practicality of, if you say one mean thing about your brother, not only are you apologizing, but you don't have to come up with 3 nice things to say about him, I think will be so pivotal for them, because the only time they're on the same team is when one of them is in trouble with us. And then it's like, oh, you're in trouble. I feel so bad for you. And suddenly they're nice. But like, other than that, they're oil and water. And so I think it's going to be so healthy for them to have to practice the kind words. And I also really love the around the table thing. I think that's going to be really practical for us, because it'll not only illuminate ways that they can be a blessing to one another, but also how we can be that to them. To your point, like today, I woke up this morning and randomly played a game of Yahtzee with my youngest. I haven't played Yahtzee in years, but he wanted to learn how to play. And it was the greatest. It was like the best 30 minutes of my week. And that would probably be something that he would bring up with Pass the Salt Shaker of, okay, we need to do this again. Like this meant something to him. So for me, those are just going to be so practical to apply to our days.
Yeah. Well, and it's, you know, I think the whole art of getting people on the same team can be really challenging. But I mean, high five, that's helping them get on the same team, saying positive things. Or, you know what, give them a challenge together that they have to do. And hey, you know, if you guys figure this out together, we're getting ice cream. If you guys figure this out together, we're, you know, going to do X, Y, Z. Like we'll play a game as whatever they love, you know what I mean? And I think continuing, because our boys do the same thing. I mean, they're 5 and 3 almost, and they're they are best friend brothers. Like they are best friends one minute and they are trying to kill each other the next minute. And it really is a challenge of like, okay, how can I encourage you to do that? Or one thing, I don't know what it is. I think it's because pennies are like a big deal to them because they can see them and everyone doesn't want pennies now. And so I've been doing this thing where like Lincoln does something really, my oldest does something really kind for Sawyer. And I'm like, buddy, that is amazing. Like, here's a penny. And now he's doing it more because yes, there's a reward, but it's also teaching him that like, hey, when you don't do something nice, you're going to time out. If you do something great, like here's something tangible that you can have. And so I think that's brilliant. And the other thing I would just share on this is that if you have a kid who is really struggling, like if you tell them like come up with 3 positive things about yourself, some people and some kids, that's really, really hard to do. And so one thing that I can't take credit for this at all. We have an incredible, her name's America. She's basically our daughter now at this point. We've adopted her into our family. But she comes and helps out with the boys a couple days a week. And she helped both of our boys come up with a list of things that they love about themselves, which is amazing. And so literally they'll go through the list and it's awesome as a parent because now like they see these things already and how wonderful. Like, and so I use it both as like a praise tool, but also a calm down tool. Like, hey, here are things that you're really, yeah, that was a hard moment, but hey, this and this and this and this. And so if you can help somebody kind of come up with some things that they see in themselves, write it down, put it in your notes app on your phone, and then use that as a way to help them and encourage them.
I love it. Okay, number 3.
Yes, attaching high value. This one is fun. I think there's some really fun things that you can do with this because really what you're trying to do is give people a picture of how incredible and how valuable they are. So we've just used words. So now we get to kind of change it up and do some action. So one fun thing that you can do is do a family awards ceremony where each person is gifted their own award and mom and dad can make up the awards where it's like, or the family can vote on it. Like, hey, what do we think that they are and have some fun doing that. And each person is, in again, focusing on those character traits, the unique things that they bring. And it's not about competition. It really is about helping everybody realize that they have unique strengths that they bring to this family. And that's a wonderful thing when we combine it. Another thing that is really cool, especially if you have kids that are of movie watching age. So one thing that my dad did that we're actually going to try with my oldest because he's just now at the age where he'll like sit and watch a movie is wake them up for a special movie night and have a special movie with snacks, just the two of you, and like wake them up so that it feels really like clandestine and special and have them come out and do it. Like that's how my dad introduced us to Star Wars. He did that for me and my sister separately. We each got like a Star Wars night. For Lincoln, it's probably going to be like the Paw Patrol movie because that's the only thing he'll sit through. But do something special like that or wake them up and take them to go look at stars. Like do something where it's a special moment, just you and them to show them that like, hey, I see you and I want to make sure that we're getting intentional time together. Another fun thing that you can do to attach high value would be to have like a really cool, this is just a silly idea, but it's fun. Have a walk-up song for each person so that when they come in, like you celebrate them. So your kid comes home from camp, it's their special walk-up song and everybody like dances when they come in because it says in Proverbs that bright eyes makes the heart glad. And so what's a fun way that we can bless people when they come into our home, when we see them, that we can let them know, I'm so excited that you're here. Like dad gets home from work. All right, it's dad's walk up song. Like we're dancing as a family, and it just kind of makes it like it so often we get caught up in life and we don't slow down for those little moments. But man, what dad or mom or kid doesn't want to come in the door and feel like my whole family is stoked to see me? Like, I cannot wait to walk in that home.
Well, and it totally flips around because a lot of times you're coming in and the day has been hard and the day has been long for both the child and the adult. Like dad comes home from work, he's exhausted. He's had a really long day. Like mom's exhausted because she's been home with the kids or the kids have had a hard day at co-op or school, whatever it is that they're doing. But like, what a way to flip that around. And instead of having somebody walk into the grump and the mess of the day, and while there's room for that, because not every day is a walk-up song day, there's grace for the grump days. What an awesome way to rewrite the evening of you've had a really hard day out there, but in here, we're going to dance because you're home and we're so amped to see you.
Totally. And you're absolutely right. Like, it does not take away the, okay, now let's get to work, or, okay, I really need you to jump in now with something. But it really can set the tone, as opposed to like, gosh, I know the second I come in, it's going to be chaos. To going back to like, you know what, it can still be fun. It's absolutely going to be chaos, but it can still be fun. And we can still take time to connect.
And it's a choice. It's a choice. Are you going to let the chaos control you, or are you going to say, hey, it's chaotic, but we're going to just embrace it and we're going to roll with it? And I'm saying that because I need to hear that myself. I sometimes let the chaos control me to where it will put me in a bad mood, or I will get grumpy, or I will get frustrated or snappy, or nothing positive comes when I'm in that place. But to just, okay, Lord, like, there's something for me in this moment. I can still be a blessing to my husband and my kids, and intentionally doing things to attach value to their day, which it's God's economy. Like, when you're so focused on blessing someone else, you're unable to be in the depth of despair with your own issue, right? Like, it's just such an upside down kingdom idea of, okay, I'm going to choose to bless my husband and my kids. I'm going to choose to attach high value to their day and who they are, even when I feel awful. And somehow in that, I end up being the blessed one.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's so true. And what a beautiful way to phrase that. And I think, you know, I'm going to just be honest, like, dance parties have changed our family, not just for the, like, when you come in, but we were in a really horrific car accident. It'll be 3 years in July. It was, we were my 3-week-old, my almost 2-year-old, my husband and I were driving on I-5 here in Seattle, and 2 kids were street racing at 8 a.m. One lost control of his vehicle and hit the back of our truck, and we rolled 4 times on the freeway. And praise Jesus, we landed on our wheels. But my husband, I didn't know if he was alive at the scene. He broke 5 vertebrae in his neck and suffered a traumatic brain injury. And so I went from being a mom of 2 under 2 to a mom of 2 under 2 and a caretaker in like a split second, like 3 weeks post C-section. So I'm not supposed to lift anything heavier than 10 pounds. And I'm like helping lift my husband out of a car. And so our life got really crazy, really, really fast. And God was so gracious and so kind, but it was also so hard. And one thing that flipped the script for me in that season was dance parties, because it was like nap time. Like, you know, when you have to wake your kids up from a nap, that was like a valley of the shadow of death for me. It was like every day at like 2:30 or 3 p.m., I was in a horrible mood, because I've lived 20 lifetimes before that, because I'm not sleeping because I have a 3-week-old. I'm in the middle of all this stress. Like, so I've been up all night now, like the whole day is gone. And then the day hasn't even ended, because we have to get them up from nap. And there's the pre-nap prep, and then there's dinner prep, and then there's dinner, and then there's bedtime. And then there's all the stuff that I didn't get to do because I didn't get to do it. And then I don't sleep again. So it was like that window for me, mama got crazy. Like, and y'all know, like, when mom's in a bad mood, it's not good for anyone. And so I just remember being like, Jesus, like, I need something. I need one thing that can change the feel of this for me and for our kids. And he was like, dance party. And I was like, okay. And so I started waking my kids up from nap with a dance party. And it was amazing how on the days when I chose to do that, 2 songs in, everyone's having fun. It did not change what was ahead, but it sure as heck changed my attitude. And my boys loved it. They still love dance parties. Like, our dishwasher overflowed before Christmas, and we had to move out of our house for a while, and it was chaos and pandemonium. And it was like, dad's at work. You know, it always happens when dad's at work. And it was like, okay, dance party, guys. Like, you know, and so it's not saying put off dealing with what's happening, but there is a way to say, you know what, we can still find joy and gratitude in this moment, even if it's doing something silly to change the atmosphere in our home. So like, just know that, like, if it works for nap time, it works. When your dishwasher overflows, you know, that has been a huge game changer for our family. And we do that still. The boys are having a meltdown. All right, guys, dance party. And they might fight you for a minute, but even your teenagers, if they see mom and dad getting down, like, they're going to enjoy that, whether they let you know that they are or not.
It is really amazing how the discipline of doing something like this, if it's meant to like turn around like our kids' behavior or our husband's mood, all the blessing ends up coming on us, because it's like the Lord just uses it to work on our hearts too. So I just so practical. I love that one. Okay, number 4.
Yes, number 4 is special future. So I already shared the one with my dad with the list of character traits that you see in them. I think every parent should do that, whether your kid's in crisis or not. Give them a list of things that are true about who they are. Even if maybe they can't see it happening, do it. Like write them a list. Another fun thing is really make sure that you are studying who your kid is and you are showing interest in their interests. And let me just show you an example because it doesn't matter what age they are. So my son, from the time that he could walk, has been obsessed. My oldest has been obsessed with vacuums. I have no idea why, but he loves vacuums. He is almost 5 now. He can take apart our Dyson. He can fix our Dyson. He can tell us what all the components are. He knows all the model numbers of different things. Like, he loves vacuums. And so I was like, all right, how do we encourage this love of vacuums? So I found a vacuum YouTube channel. I threw him a Vacuum Wars birthday party where we got all of our friends and family and neighbors to compete with vacuums to see who could vacuum things up the fastest. He still talks about that. And so really it's like, okay, I'm going to go buy, we call it vacuum cereal, where it's like, cereal from the dollar store that he gets to like vacuum up. And so, it's like, what are your kids into? And join them in it. And I don't care if it's vacuums or if it's like our youngest loves garbage trucks. And so we're like, we found a friend of a friend of a friend who drives garbage trucks. And so we're going to take him to get to go meet the garbage man. Like, so what can you do to encourage what your kids are into? And again, I'm not saying like if it's unhealthy, that's a totally different thing. But what is it about them? Because my kid doesn't want to do what I want to do. And it's not his job to want to do what I want to do. It's my job to say, okay, God, you have wired him with this amazing engineering brain. How can I encourage him with that in ways that mean something to him? And my grandma did a phenomenal job of this. When she passed away, she had 3 sons, my dad, his twin brother, and their older brother. I don't know if he shared the story, but she had that bookshelf, and it was, she had a whole shelf was Construction Digest, because my older uncle, that's what he did. He drove heavy machinery. So she wanted to be able to talk to Joe about that. She had an entire shelf that was genetics, and had even taken a genetics 101 class so that she could talk to my dad's twin about what he did for his job. And then she had not only my dad's books, but marriage and family and psychology and faith, which she was a strong believer anyways. But it was, okay, how can I talk to John about what he's doing? And so if we want to really love our kids and add that special future, we need to look at how God has created them and choose to engage with them in that. Another way we can do that is give each of them a special day. We do the special plate a lot in our house. That's another thing you can do. Like literally go on Amazon and Google special plate, and it's like this cute red thing. And so we like use and abuse that, where it's, okay, first day of school, last day of school. Okay, you got your first stripe at Taekwondo. Okay, you were nice to your brother for an entire week. Like, here's a special, like, we use and abuse the special plate, and they love it. And if you have more than one kid, get more than one, because just thank me later. But do a special day where it's their day, and they get to choose where they want to go eat. They get to choose a fun activity, and that's what you do. You just call them, like, I call them Mommy Sawyer dates or Mommy Lincoln dates or Daddy, whatever dates, but give them an opportunity where it's like, hey, buddy, what do you want to do today? Go pick something that you want to do and let's go do it. And again, it's showing them, hey, I love you enough to engage with you with things that you're interested in, and take time to do that. So, and you can do that whether your kids are 40 or 3.
I grew up with the special plate.
That's awesome.
My Nana and Papa had one. It's been around forever. I mean, I'm 37 years old, and like I remember eating kindergarten breakfast on your special plate. And I thought we had one, but now that I'm sitting here talking to you, I don't know if we have one. So that 2 are being added to my cart immediately after this episode.
Yes, you will thank me for having the second one, because especially if your kids are competitive, and it's not to be like one can't have something and the other can't, but like there's going to be 2 first days of school. There's going to be 2 like,
yes,
you'll thank me later. Yes.
Agree 100%. I think in general, this one is probably the one that I will struggle the most with. And I don't know if it's like being a female and having male children. Like, I don't know what it is, but I do struggle to want to get down on their level. And I've struggled with this since like day one, of wanting to get down to their level and play what they want to play or do what they want to do, because they want to do things. Not even that I'm not interested in. It's not that, because I can pull up my big girl pants and do something that I don't feel like doing. but I don't know how to. Like they're so into
Yeah.
baseball and basketball. I don't know how to play baseball. And I try to throw a ball and it ends up like in the gutter. Like I can't hang. Or they want to go fishing and I'm like, I can't tie the knot. I don't know how to get the hook out of the fish's mouth. And so that is one that I really struggle with. And it's going to be something that I have to regularly challenge myself on, because I just am not naturally bent towards being good at or knowing how to do the things that they want to do.
Well, and here's the awesome thing. You don't have to be. And so much of it can be, hey, could you teach me? Like I want to go, like I want to go fishing with you. Can you teach me how to do that? And if they're little, then they might not be able to yet, but they can teach you some things. And YouTube for everything else, because I am telling you, YouTube can solve so many. YouTube, TikTok, like there's got to be some little viral video on like how do you tie a fishing lure or whatever. But it's even like, hey, I just want to go and sit with you. Or hey, if it's baseball, can you teach me how to improve my throw? Like, and it's going to be chaos. They're not going to know what they're doing, but it's going to be awesome. And it's also a great way of showing, like, I care enough to not only be here with you, but I want to learn. And it's also kind of letting them feel like a little expert. And so, like, I just remove that pressure because, and I super appreciate you sharing that because that's super vulnerable and it's honest. Like, I think all of us feel that way about certain things. Like, my oldest wants to get into BMX biking. And I'm like, I know zero about that. I don't even know if like, are there lessons?
Like, nor am I going to go buy a BMX bike and like
go learn myself. Yeah, like we would all be in the hospital.
No,
like no. And so it is kind of like, okay, when it's beyond our realm, it's like, okay, well, who do I know that knows that knows that knows? Or hey, buddy, like, can you teach me what you're doing there or how you want to do it? Or I'll just be here. Like, and I think like that really brings us even into that last element of genuine commitment, which if I could sum up in two other words, it would be here, be there, just be there. And whether you're there sitting on the dock while they're fishing or you're there like me trying to figure out what the heck is BMX and what does that mean? And oh my gosh, are we going to need a lot of stitches over the next few years? Like be there. And sometimes even just our presence is enough to say, I may not get it, but I love you. And then ask questions like, hey, why do you like, what is it about that? Or, hey, I saw that you did that new thing, that new trick today. What is that? Can you tell me more about that? And I think those are just great ways where we don't necessarily have to do it, but we can still show like, I care enough to want to know why this is important to you and how valuable it is.
And can I add, and not because I do this well, but because it's a conviction I have to be better, is be there without your phone.
100%.
Because I can be there and I can watch them shoot hoops in the backyard. But if I'm sitting here and I'm scrolling the whole time that I'm watching them, all I hear is, hey, Mom, are you watching? Mom, are you looking at me? Mom. And that does so much damage to what you're trying to accomplish. Like, not only does it mean that you're not accomplishing what you're trying to accomplish, you're actually doing damage because your child is seeing you on your phone versus actually being there. And again, I'm not saying this because I've got it down. I have a struggle with my phone, but I got to figure it out. I got to figure out how to treat my phone like a landline and not have it be this like extension of me because it's impacting my kids.
100%. And and I think that's so right. And I do the same thing. It's like they're outside playing, they're good for a minute. I'm like, oh, I need to order that thing, or I need to look that up, or I need to reply to so and so because I haven't done that in 5 days, or whatever the thing is. And sometimes those are easy moments where we think that, but you're absolutely right. Like there's this concept called ARE where it's being available, responsive, and engaged. And they did a big study to see how often do we need to be available, responsive, and engaged for somebody to actually feel like we are. And let me just define those really quick. So like available, like when someone comes to you, are you actually able to hear them, to respond to them? Are you responsive? Are you responding appropriately instead of saying like, I don't have time for that, or phone up to the face, like whatever it is? And then are you engaged? Are you actually finishing the conversation and meeting them on an emotional level instead of just like you can tell when someone's distracted and they're looking around or they're, whatever it is they're doing. So what do you think that percentage is? How often do you think you have to be ARE for somebody to feel like you're really available, responsive, and engaged with them?
Oh gosh. I mean, I want to say a high number, 80%.
Here's the good news, 30.
Oh,
If you're available, responsive, and engaged 30% of the time, it feels like 100. And here's the better news. When we're not, when we repair with somebody, it feels like 100. So let's say like my husband, for example, or my kids, let's say somebody needed something and I had something going on in the moment, or I was trying to do something on my phone, or I was doing whatever it was and I just missed it. If I circle back to that person and just say, hey, I am so sorry. I know that you really wanted to talk to me about something, and it's really important to me to hear what you have to say. Can we talk about that? Or with my husband, a lot of times it's, I'm so sorry. I really want to talk about that. Is there a good time tonight after the kids are in bed that we can connect, because it's important to me to hear what you have to say? So when we do that, it feels like 100. So we don't have to be perfect, but I honestly think we can all do better than 30%. And, like I've been trying to experiment with like the mute things on my phone, or like even like there's an app where
you can like brick out of your phone.
Yes, that. Because it's so easy to be like, oh, I'm sitting there and they're doing something and that reminds me of something that I totally forgot that I could just take care of really quick instead of trying to be in the moment. And so, yeah, I think that's so right on. But again, just that encouragement of, man, even if we mess up as moms, which we're going to because we're humans, we can go back and repair. And repair actually doubles the strength of relationship, whether it's with ARE or whether it's with actual breaks in relationship. When we go back and repair with someone, the strength of the bond doubles. And so we're not failures, we're human. And it is not too late to go back and to repair things or to show up for our kids and our families in different ways.
That is one thing that has always been a huge part of motherhood for me and parenting for my husband and I. I will always say sorry and encourage the repair, because I get it wrong more often than I get it right.
Same.
But if I'm able to be humble and show my kids, hey, I messed up here, I shouldn't have done that. Or my husband says, you know what, guys, I did this or I did that and it was wrong, or I shouldn't have treated your mom that way, or whatever, fill in the blank, whatever it is, the repair that is modeled for my kids is so valuable, and it has paid dividends in our home. Like it has paid out tenfold in our home. And so if you're listening today and you're not saying sorry to your kids, or your husband's not saying sorry to your kids, that is not you guys like being weak or watering down your parenting. Yep. That is just you modeling for your kids, we're going to mess up. We are all sinners in need of a savior. None of us are perfect, and we're going to have to get really good at apologizing daily. Yep. And it's such a healthy thing to have in the home. And we don't do a lot right, but that is one thing we do right, is we apologize a lot.
Well, and I love that you guys even do that like with each other, so that they can see, oh, mom and dad are going to not get along all the time or not have the same opinion about something, but even they do that. And, the stronger person always initiates the peace. And again, that's with boundaries and health included. I always say that, especially because if there's like abuse and stuff, you don't want to, there's a difference. But what I'm trying to say is that it really does take a special kind of strength to repair. And I think you're totally right. And like, how often as parents can we go back to that and say, we actually did this with my son earlier today, because he was having a standoff on wanting to apologize to his brother. I have one who timeout is like a total threat, and he will snap to if you threaten that. And I have another one who laughs in your face and will stay in his bed for as long as it takes. But I tried to try to be like, look, buddy, how often do mommy and daddy say we're sorry? And it was like, well, a lot. Have mommy and daddy ever hurt you and not said sorry? Well, no. And, it's like, again, we're not perfect, but man, like if we want our kids to learn to say these things, we need to be the ones that are showing them how to do it.
I couldn't agree more. And again, I don't do a lot right, but that is the one thing I am proud of. Not the one thing, but it's one of the things that I'm proud of in our parenting, is that we're quick to apologize. We're quick to repair. We're quick to model that for our kids, and not just like, oh, sorry. It's a genuine, hey, I shouldn't have lost my temper. That was wrong. Or I shouldn't have been on my phone. You were trying to get my attention and I was too busy in my emails, and that was wrong. Can I get your forgiveness?
Absolutely. With genuine commitment, one easy way to live that out is to say, and I say this to my boys every night before they go to bed, I love you always, forever, and no matter what. And I say it again and again and again and again and again. And one of them always asks me, why do you always say that? I'm like, because I always want you to know. I don't ever want you to doubt it. But here's the really cool thing. you know how sometimes you think as a parent, you're like, is it sinking in? Do they understand it? I had a moment the other night with my oldest. So my dad wrote a book about the blessing called I Choose You, and it's for kids. And we're in the process of redoing the artwork and getting that republished. And so I wanted to read my son that book for the first time, like the new version, to kind of see what he thought. And in the book, there's this little elephant named Norbert, and he has a terrible day at school. And his mom is trying to get him to understand that she would choose him out of all the kids in their kid storybook world. And so she's like, hey, if I could pick any kid, you know, that had this trait, who would I pick? And so he starts picking all these other animals. And we get to like animal number 2, and he looks at me and he's like, Mom, I don't understand. He was like, you would pick me every single time. So I don't understand why this elephant is having a bad day. And I just started laughing and borderline crying. And I just remember calling my dad afterwards, and I was like, well, your grandson doesn't need this book. Like, you get, you know, and as a parent, sometimes those moments, it's like, oh my gosh, like, praise Jesus. But that's also a great sign that, like, I need to double down on what we're doing. Because somewhere in there, even on bad days, like, he gets it. He's somewhere in his brain, it is clicking. My parents would choose me. And so I just want to encourage you that, like, none of this is wasted. The little things, the big things, none of it is wasted. And man, like, if something's working, keep doing that.
Okay, so you guys have this amazing personality assessment, or it's a way of like talking about different personalities. There's animals, which our kids will love. So talk us through these animals, what they mean, and I guess how we can use it in relationship with our families, our loved ones.
Yeah. So if you go to strongfamilies.com, you can actually take this assessment and see what animal you are. And we're actually in the process. We're about a month out from launching a full 14-page version that gives you tons of stuff, but not just on who you are, but who you are in relation to others, which is really what...
Well, I'll wait and release this episode until that's live. So you'll have to stay in touch with me.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this episode, it is live.
Take it. Let us know what you think. We're really excited. But so, you know, God did not create us to do life alone. He's put us with people, and he's placed us with people intentionally. And it's really important for us to, as we hear about these animals, not just think about who am I, but like, who is in my home? Who has God really placed me with? So our first fuzzy friend is what we call a lion. So lions are really take charge. They're really assertive. They're the boss, or at least they think they are. These are the kids that actually get energy arguing with you. So if you've got a lion teenager, you know, you're walking away disheveled and they're like hyped up and thought that was a really great conversation.
That's my 9-year-old. Without a doubt, my 9-year-old is a lion. There's like energy from like arguing with me. I'm like, my answer is not going to change. My answer never changes, but like, it's still just this constant peppering of things and questions.
Totally. Yep, they're letting you live at home, and you better like it. And yeah, so these are also the people that think that stoplights are a tool of Satan, so they will go through the mini mart just to keep the car moving. But they're great people. They're great to have in our homes. If you want to motivate a lion, just tell them that they can't do something, and watch their eyes light up with the challenge, and they're like, I will do it, or point them in the right direction. So they're phenomenal people. They're great kids. And so some of us have lions running around our home. Others of us have what we call otters, or parties waiting to happen. And otters, they love to talk. They don't really know anybody's name, but they know millions of people. They have a best school friend, and a best elevator friend, and a best I just met you friend, a best you're not my friend yet, but you're going to love me friend. They're great with people. They are optimistic. They see life with, you know, eyes wide open in such a beautiful, positive way. They love to start things. They don't really finish very much, but they love to start things. But they're great people. They're great to have in your home. You know, they really are just that life of the party. And they're always in groups. They're just phenomenal. We love.
Okay, wait. I have to ask.
Yes.
Can you be different animals?
You sure
or are
can.
you like one or the other?
Oh, so no, you are talking right now to a lion otter, which means I lead the way to the party.
Okay, because I was going to say, my 9-year-old, you described a lion. I'm like, he is a lion, but I also call him the mayor because he knows everyone. He has never met a stranger. He is best friends with the amount of best friends he has, I can't keep track.
Yeah.
Like, everyone is his best friend. He is also an otter. I'm like, wait, which one is he?
Yep, totally. No, and most of us tend to be somewhat of a blend. And where, how the strengths show up, like if you're a lion otter, that means you're probably more of a lion than an otter, but it's still like, so, or you could be an otter lion, which means you have way more fun, but you still want to, get the task done. And so yes, absolutely. We can be a combination, and most of us are. Which is really kind of a fun thing to see, is like, oh, okay, and how do those different bents actually play into our personalities? But yes, you are totally right. You can be a combo. And then we've got what we call golden retrievers, and golden retrievers are sensitive and loyal and caring and compassionate. I mean, these are the people that buy 18 to 20 boxes of Girl Scout cookies every year because it's genetically impossible to say one small but very important word.
No.
No, it is so hard for them to say no because they love people and they don't want to let people down. And every decision that they make, it's, oh, how is this impacting the people around me? It can be sometimes hard for them to hold boundaries, but man, are they so good at seeing people who are hurting and stepping into that, or even just their way to bring peace and joy into situations where it otherwise wouldn't happen. And I do want to pause here because I think so often, especially in our culture, in the US, is we tend to think if I'm not a lion, I'm not a leader. And that is absolutely not true. All of these animals are leaders. It's just coming from a different place. The lions, it's more coming with force and that kind of thing. For the golden retrievers, man, it's about caring for the people around us. So yes, I want to get something done, but I want to make sure that the people are okay too.
Well, in some respects, the golden retriever is going to be the better leader because they're able to lead by loving people and serving people. They're going to be the servant leader versus the take charge and do what I say leader. So in some respects, they're probably more effective leaders.
Well, and they can be, but watch what happens when you put a golden retriever under pressure. So now there's a deadline and I have to make a decision that's not going to make everybody happy. Are they going to shrink back or are they going to run forward? And so that's, again, why God places us with people who are different. Because, golden retrievers are going to be so good at seeing the people. The lions are going to say, look, at the end of the day, we still have to make a decision. And we can't make everybody happy. And so, if you're able to come together as a team, you're going to make better decisions. You're going to solve problems in a different way that leads to better results. And you're going to be able to really move the needle on things that need to happen because of that. And so, God places us with people that are different than us, not to defeat us, but to complete us. So in those moments where lions need to be reminded, man, I've got to soften. I've got to remember there are people involved. And where golden retrievers need to remember that, hey, if I don't hit this deadline, there actually are consequences to that. That's where we can really help each other as a team, as a parent, as a spouse, as a friend, however that is. And then there's one last animal, which is our beaver friends. And if you want something done right, you leave it to beaver because they are the only ones that remembered to bring the food to the Christmas party because it was on their list. These are the people that are, they're so great at finishing things. In fact, did you know that in nature, like actual nature, beavers, when they build a beaver dam, it is done so well that for them to actually destroy it, they have to bring out the Army Corps of Engineers and use C4 explosives to get rid of it. Because it is engineered and done so well and so precisely that you can't take it apart otherwise.
Is that like for real? Like a human has to come and destroy a beaver dam?
They have to come and destroy the beaver dam because they literally cannot take it apart another way because God's little architects built it to perfection.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so those are some people that we have running around our homes. I mean, these are the people that finish things. They maybe even wrote the rule book. They also read the IKEA instructions, unlike the otter who forgot that there were instructions when they started the project. Maybe you're like me and you're living with a hyper beaver, which is my husband Joey, where you go into the garage and it's not the perfectly labeled boxes or the tool chest that has the outline of the tool and the notebook where you write down I took out the wrench at 9:42 and I put it back at 10:01. It's none of that. It's the car situation. And my husband not only has like the ball where you're supposed to stop the car, but he actually put colored tape on the sides and on the back so that when my backup camera is on, I'm supposed to know that if I match it to the lines on my backup camera, it will fit perfectly and all of the doors will open perfectly so I don't hit anything when I get the kids out.
I do not have a beaver living in my house. Let me just tell you. There are no beavers, and I wish there was a beaver. There are no beavers in my house.
Sometimes, yeah. But like as an otter, am I ever going to park the car correctly?
No.
Like, no. And can that be frustrating to a beaver who's like, you just follow the lines, and it's like, what lines? Like, I tried. There are no lines. Like, so, again, it's like that. God put us with people different than us on purpose, not to defeat us, but to complete us and to make us stronger. And when we really understand who's living in our home and also who we are, we can choose to relate to people in a different way. And so that's really kind of what our personality test is all about, is not only understanding, man, who are you, but who are you in relationship, and how can we best love people like Jesus? What does that person really need from us in order for them to thrive and to grow in who they are and who God has created them to be?
As parents, is it more likely that our kids are probably a version of what we are? Like, if my son, I'm convinced my oldest is a lion and an otter. Is that probably because my husband and I are also some version of lions and otters? Or can you have a kid that's totally different than you?
Yeah, not necessarily. You can absolutely have a kid that's totally different. And really, it's, how did God make them? How did God create their precious little brain and their precious little responses? There are like learned responses, things that they do pick up from mom and dad, obviously. But who they are, like from a solid standpoint, is really who God has wired them to be. And sometimes God gives us a kid that's similar, and sometimes he gives us one where we're like, oh yeah, that I don't know what to do with that. That's new. Or you've got two golden retriever parents who get a lion child. How do you navigate that as a family? And so again, like God chooses who he places us with. But it really is then, how can we choose to use that information to solve conflict, to create resilient and healthy kids that aren't just roaring lions that are going to tear everybody down, or golden retrievers that can't solve problems. We need to be able to help them understand who they're created to be and how to not let those strengths be pushed to an extreme so that they become a weakness, and really shepherd them through that.
And so will your website, this new launch that you guys have, will this walk us through what we are only? Do we have our kids take it? How do we digest the results? Like, talk me through all of that.
Yep, absolutely. So how we have it built out is we want it to be a relational assessment. So you would get one that's just you, and then you can add on a family profile to it for like very minimal. And so you could actually have your spouse and your kids, and you would get a marriage profile. Who are we in our marriage together? And who am I in relation to my kids? And so you can absolutely see the whole family, and it'll give you a really cool graph on like, okay, here's where we are. So we've got, a golden retriever and 3 otters, and okay, here's what that means for our family. And maybe here's how we need to grow as a family. Here's, as a parent, ways that I can support that kid that's different than me, ways that we can all, choose to blend our differences together. And then same thing with marriage. Who are we in our marriage? Who am I under stress as a mom? Who am I under stress as a spouse? Because we all know that when you apply pressure to people, we maybe respond in different ways. Golden retrievers, they still have teeth, right? They can still fight back. And so I think, again, it's we're trying to give people this beautiful picture of who am I, but more importantly, who am I in relationship? And what do people need from me? What do I need from them? And how can we all choose to say, man, I want to love you like Jesus? And that doesn't mean abandoning who you are, but that may mean adding some of those stronger traits, like, our lion and our beaver friends are kind of experts at the strong side of love, boundaries, finishing things, they're tough on problems, but they can also be tough on people. And so maybe we need to add more of that soft side, which would be our golden retrievers and our otters, which are grace and compassion and, understanding and, all of those things. And so what do we need to do in order to be the healthiest version of us and to create the healthiest relationships that we can with God's wisdom and support.
And where can people find this information? Where can people connect with you or your dad? Give us where to find you and all of this info.
Yeah, so strongfamilies.com is where you can find my dad and I. That's our hub. And then this assessment is going to live at Strong Families. You'll be able to find it there, but we're also going to have a separate website for it. That's animalpersonalitytest.com. And I'll send you the links to that you can drop in, but it'll be animalpersonalitytest.com. And that will have everything in terms of the assessment and how you can do that. And then we also have a corporate version of this, because we do this a lot with corporate entities too, on like, how can you understand who you are at work and in that role and stuff like that too. So we're really excited. We're working hard on that, and just can't wait for that to hopefully be something that really helps people.
Well, I know I'm very excited to dig in and figure it all out for my family. Well, I ask every guest this at the end of every episode, so I will ask you. At Raising Rock, we have 4 core values. So those 4 values are respect, obedience, courage, and kindness. The 4 character traits that I first hope to have in myself, but then pass on to my children, all of course rooted in God's words. Which of those jump out at you, and how can you just encourage the mom listening today?
I think courage is the one that jumps out at me. And I think maybe part of it is just because of the season that we're coming out of. I shared earlier about the accident and the impact that had on my family. It's really just been the last 5 months that I feel like I've actually gotten my husband back. Anyone who's been through a traumatic brain injury knows how hard that is. And so not knowing who my person was going to end up being and how we were going to navigate things, it's been a lot. And so I think courage stands out for me, because for so many of us, there's something hard going on, and there's something that we're battling, and we are looking at that and maybe even asking God, like, I don't see how. I don't see how. And so I think what I would want to just encourage you with is that he's not done. He's not going to leave you in that place. And 2, it's the little yeses that are going to keep getting you through this. It doesn't have to be a 180 yes. It just needs to be a little yes. And I think the other thing that I have really tried to do to add that courage step to our lives the past 3 years, actually, when I first met the Lord, when I got out of that abusive relationship, I started a journal, and I call it my blessing journal. And it's really a list of every way that I could think of that God showed up for me, big and small. And I have added to it so much over the last 3 years, because I will tell you, when you are able to go back and see, okay, he did this, he did this, he did this, he did this, not only is that filling your brain with gratitude and faith, but it's reminding you that, man, this obstacle is nothing for the God who's fighting for me. This obstacle is nothing for a God that loves me more than I can possibly imagine. And so that would be my encouragement, would be go back, make a journal, like think through every single thing you can think of. And it is really, really rare that I get past page 2.5 before I'm like, okay, God, you got it. Okay, let's get back to work, because you've got it. If you showed up here, there's no way in the world you're not showing up for this. And that's not to minimize what anyone is walking through, but we have a God who is so mighty and so able and so crazy about you that he wants to meet you in that place and give you the courage that you need for that day. And just that 2-degree yes, that small yes, to say, okay, God, I'm going to choose to do what you've asked today. Even if it's getting out of bed, even if it's brushing my teeth, even if it's doing a dance party when I really, really don't feel like it. Those little yeses add up, and they're going to carry you through the challenge.
And I love that tip you just gave is biblical. All throughout scripture, we see this idea of remembering. I just did a study in 2 Peter of remember. It's repeated over and over in 2 Peter, like remember what you've been taught, remember the scriptures, because adversity is going to come, persecution is going to come, all these things are going to come. But if you remember what God has done and what God has promised, you're going to stay grounded. And if you look at the Israelites, like all the festivals and the feasts they had, they were all to remember what God had done for them. Because as soon as you start to forget what God has done, you start losing gratitude, you start losing hope, you start losing joy. But if you remember the cross, you remember the blood that he was shed, you're taking communion to help you remember, you're reading your Bible, you're remembering, suddenly all of that loses its grip on you, and the world loses its grip on you because you're remembering. And I love the practicality of a journal and writing down, big or small, everything God's ever done for you, or have a note in your phone that's just a running list of the things that God's done for you. Because if you remember those things, suddenly the grip of the world, the grip of your worries, the grip of your fears, all of it starts to lose its grip because you're remembering who God is and what he's capable of.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it actually came out of, we teach a thing called life mapping, and the last element is memorial marker. And it really is talking about the Israelites when they crossed over the Jordan into the promised land, and he had them go back and stack the stones to remember what he did. And that's really that. It's my way of tangibalizing, a memorial marker. And so it is absolutely a huge way to do that, like you just said. It is about remembering, but I do want to say with that, like, it is 100% okay. Why I love Psalms is it is 100% okay to start your conversation with God and be like, what the heck, man? Like, did you forget? Are you there? Do you hear me? Do you see it? I mean, David does it a bazillion times. There are so many things in scripture, but he always goes back at the end with gratitude. And that's where, again, I am not in any way saying don't ask God hard questions. He can handle it. He wants to hear what's on your heart. He already knows, so lying to him is pointless. So it's okay to start there. But if you're having a hard time doing the other part, that's where the journal comes in, where it's like, okay, God, you know what? I don't see it today, but man, you did this, you did this, you did this, you did this. And to get our brains back into that space of, I'm not going to stay in the chaos of the what if and the, oh my gosh, it's a mess. I'm going to choose. Even on days when it's hard. And again, I don't do this perfectly. There are days where my husband's like, you're stacking. Maybe you need to go do something different, to get back on track with choosing to say, I trust you and you've got this, Lord.
Well, Kari, thank you so much for just the practicality in this episode. I know I'm walking away with a few things that I'm literally implementing the second I walk back through my doors. And I know they're going to have a lifelong impact on my children and the blessing in their life. And so thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. Well, and tell us how it goes. I want to know. I want to know what you implemented and how it worked.
Absolutely.
If it worked.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Kari.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. What a blessing to get to be here.